Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Wednesday, May 31st. This is Gina McGuire. As a reminder, these webcasts will be issued Monday through Friday through June 11th, and at that point we will move to issuing the webcasts 7 days throughout the fire season. Looking at overall fire potential impacts for today, we are not expecting any significant impacts overall across the Great Basin. However, we will continue to see dry and warm conditions over southern areas of the Great Basin, along with windy conditions today over the eastern half of Nevada into western Utah. Therefore, if we do get starts, especially in the lower elevation grasses, we will have the potential for some spread. Over the western side of the Great Basin, increased relative humidity has already set into western Nevada and the Sierra, along with some showers and thunderstorms moving in later today. As we go through the next couple of days, we will see moisture move across northern areas of the Great Basin, with drying later in the week into Saturday. Looking at the last 24 hours, we've had isolated showers across the Great Basin, along with some isolated lightning activity, mainly across Idaho into parts of northeast Utah, but also a few isolated strikes along the Sierra Front into western Utah. Great Basin fire activity has been increasing, with several small fires across the area and even a couple of larger fires on the Uinta Basin and into southern Idaho over the last 24 hours. Looking at the observed precipitation over the last 7 days, the image on the left shows that most of the precipitation has been focused across northern and eastern areas of the Great Basin, especially across Idaho into western Wyoming. Over the last 30 days, precipitation has largely been well below normal across the Great Basin, with the exception of small areas of the central Idaho mountains, parts of the Sierra Front, and the Arizona Strip into far southern Utah, where areas have been near or even slightly above normal. If we look at our current fuel conditions, with this drier conditions that have set in across the Great Basin, ERCs have continued to increase, especially over southern areas of the Great Basin that are generally between the 50th and 70th percentile. Some areas over the Arizona Strip and southern Utah have climbed a little above the 70th percentile. Areas further north are still in the green but have been increasing, and this does not reflect the lower elevation grasses, which are in various states of curing across much of Nevada, Utah, and even into southern Idaho, especially on south aspects and slopes. We are seeing, and in the lower elevations, we are seeing those grasses in the brown to purple stage in many areas. If we look at live fuel moistures, relatively speaking, the graphs on the right show that live fuel moistures across Utah and Nevada are near normal for this time of year, despite all the moisture we've seen. They are decreasing, but again are generally near normal across the area. If we look at the satellite loop from this morning, we can see that area of low pressure off the west coast moving in that is pushing that band of clouds and some showers into California, which will continue moving eastward into western Nevada today. We still have a ridge of high pressure and generally clear skies over the eastern half of the Great Basin, where we will see those drier and windy conditions. For today, once again, we have that area of low pressure moving into the western side of the Great Basin, which will spread showers and occasional thunderstorms over parts of western Idaho into western Nevada, along with cooler temperatures and increased relative humidity. Therefore, significant fire potential will still remain low over the northern half of the Great Basin, and in the moderate category over southern areas that have been drier. If we look at the overall weather today, we can see the increased relative humidity along the western and northern areas. However, still dry conditions with relative humidity below 15% across much of the rest of the Great Basin. The max afternoon wind gusts are shown in the image on the right, and you can see the strongest wind gusts are generally over the eastern half of Nevada into parts of southern Idaho, the Arizona Strip, and near the Utah border, where wind gusts will be between 25 and 30 miles per hour, and some gusts between 30 and 40 miles per hour. If we move into Thursday, this cold front now sweeps eastward across the Great Basin, with the cooler temperatures and showers mainly focused across Idaho into Wyoming and parts of northern Utah, which will keep significant fire potential low. We will continue to see those drier areas over southern areas of the Great Basin, despite some cooling temperatures on Thursday. Looking at the conditions on Thursday, again, relative humidity will have increased over the northern half of the Great Basin, but still remain below 10 or 15% in far southern areas. Wind speeds will decrease by Thursday, but still remain somewhat gusty across parts of Idaho and near the Nevada-Utah border. As we move into Friday, this front is now well off to the east, with a flatter ridge of high pressure moving into the west coast, bringing warmer and drier conditions across the Great Basin. Fire potential, again, will still remain low to moderate. If we look at the conditions on Friday, you can see the relative humidity is still below 10 to 15% over much of the southern areas of the Great Basin, but with those cooler temperatures will still remain elevated across Idaho and Wyoming. Wind gusts will have decreased as that ridge starts to build in most areas, with generally light to moderate winds, with the strongest winds expected over western Wyoming, but even in those areas, most gusts will remain below 25 miles per hour. If we look at the overall forecast amount of precipitation over the next 3 days, you can see where the precipitation is focused along the Sierra and also mainly across Idaho, with some lighter precipitation over parts of northern Nevada and into the higher elevations of Utah. As we move into Saturday, this ridge of high pressure now moves into the northern Rockies and the eastern side of the Great Basin, with a weaker upper level disturbance that will swing through northern Nevada and Idaho on Saturday, and this will bring some scattered showers or thunderstorms to those areas. Therefore, we could see some starts from lightning on Saturday after a couple days of a return of warm and dry conditions. Significant fire potential, however, will still remain low despite the potential for some starts in those areas, and then moderate in the southern areas of the Great Basin. By Sunday, we see a deeper trough of low pressure move into the west coast, and this will bring cooler and wetter conditions, especially to Idaho, and continue on the northern side of the Great Basin with low fire potential. Southern areas will still remain on the drier side. As we move into Monday, this closed low starts to move further east and south, bringing much cooler temperatures and more widespread rainfall to mainly Idaho. Still, parts of Nevada and the southern areas of the Great Basin will remain dry, with generally low to moderate fire potential. By Tuesday, this area of low pressure will start to be moving eastward, with still some showers over the eastern half of the Great Basin. However, you can see, due to the precipitation mainly being focused in the north through early next week, we will continue to see the southern half of the Great Basin continue to dry. Overall forecast amount of precipitation for the next 7 days is shown in the image here, where most of this over Nevada and Utah and the Sierra will be falling here in the next couple of days. The bulk of the precipitation in the central Idaho mountains will occur Sunday into early next week. Looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, we'll continue to see chances for above normal temperatures over much of the west and below normal precipitation over the northern and western side of the Great Basin as we move into the middle of June. This will allow those fuels to cure much more rapidly as we go through the month. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.